So how, okay, so we need to let her in.
Just Gail.
Correct, just let Gail in. So we need to admit all three of those. And then. Yeah, allow recording, but I think it's recording on here. It's the problem. And if you could let the Whitaker Community Council in.
They're in. I'm just looking at
Oh.
these, like David Lewis admit.
No, not yet.
Yeah, okay, admit.
Hi, Malika.
Hi, yeah. Nice to
We
see
need
you.
to make Gail the can you mute everybody? Thank you. So we need to make Gail a host.
So
So
I'm,
do we
so I'm actually
know-
gonna make, I can just make her a co-host.
Yeah, or just, yeah,
She's now co-host.
okay, can you just unmute her?
I'm not muted.
Oh, okay, great, everyone else, is muted. So are you the host now?
I guess I
She's-
am.
She's the essentially she's the co-host because it was
I'm the
launched with
co-host.
computer. Yes, she is the host and this computer.
So I don't know what happened to our notes and our recording last month.
It says Anon's Fathom Note Taker is recording.
Correct, so it should be in there, right?
I don't know how to run that program. I'm sorry.
No, it's
I,
okay, we'll figure it out, thank you.
Okay, sure.
So, so now I'll need to start, should I start letting people in?
No, she'll do that.
Oh, that's right, 'cause she's the
Gail will
co-host.
let them in. Gail is
I got it. Thanks, Thea.
in charge, thank you.
Alrighty, now I'm just going to move this out of the way. There we
So I
go.
did, bring an agenda for everyone. And a sign-in sheet, if everybody wants it here. You can sign in.
So should I just go get like some cookies or something?
Yeah, you know, it was so great.
Yes, I just turned that on. So like, I might.
Good job. The agenda. You want one? Sure, so you want an agenda? Would you like?
Welcome to everyone online. Margaret's handing out agendas to the in-person meeting, and we'll get started here in just a few minutes. We're just going to let a few more people arrive.
Whoops. How is everyone today? Great, just so that everyone knows, we are recording the meeting, I believe, has the recording started, Gail? Fantastic. So welcome to the, Whitaker Community Council, November 8th meeting. This is our second hybrid meeting, so we're kind of excited about that. We could wait a couple more minutes and see if there's anyone else coming. So my name is Margaret, I'm the chair. And we do have some great speakers today. And normally what we do, will Gail, you want to run through how we run the meeting? That would be great.
Sure thing. So for those of us here on the Zoom, I'm sorry, let me speak up a little bit. Is this better? Can you hear me better? Let me try again. Hold on a second. But now, can you hear me now?
I could hear her before. I don't think it's anything.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll try to speak up. So welcome everyone to the Whitaker Community Council hybrid meeting. For those of us
So
who
no
are
one can-
here.
No one can hear
The-
us.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm getting an echo from the room.
Can anyone hear
So-
us?
We can hear you.
Oh.
You
But
all can
if-
hear me, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we just can't hear you, Gail.
You can't hear
I can hear
me.
you at the beginning, but I can't hear you at all now.
Hey,
Okay, let me
Gail,
try one more
every-
time.
Everybody in the Zoom meeting can hear you really well.
Okay, Margaret, everyone
Yeah,
in
because
Zoom.
I could hear Gail when we first signed up. And we made her the co-host.
Okay,
My options, here we go.
let's see.
Test, test, test.
Okay, so try again, Gail.
You can't read that.
Oh,
Yeah.
now we can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
You can hear me now? Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
So, okay.
All righty. Let me
All
Let me
right.
try again then. Welcome everyone to the Whitaker Community Council meeting. Those of us who are on Zoom, if you are interested in speaking, I'm going to do my very best to keep my eyes on the screen. But the best way for me to know if you want to talk is to use the buttons at the bottom that say reactions, and there's one that says raise hand. If you do that, it puts a little hand in the corner, and then I can see that you would like to speak, and I'll put you in the queue and I'll note it in the chat. So you can open the chat up and keep track of that. If for some reason you don't seem to know if you've been heard or not, just wave your hands and then I'll see you for sure. And otherwise, I'm going to let Margaret direct this meeting, and we're going to do our best to make sure that everybody, both live and on Zoom, has a chance to speak if and when they would like to. Thank you all for being here. If you are not currently speaking, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and mute yourself. And if you have background noise, that'll be great because it'll keep it easier for the rest of us to hear. Otherwise, welcome. I'm glad you're all here, and I hope we have a great meeting. Go ahead, Margaret, it's all yours.
All right, well, thanks for all your patience through this learning experience. So usually what we do for the first 10 minutes is we have public comments. Is there anything that anyone would like to talk about? Any comments, questions, input? Gail?
Yes, hello. I'd just like to bring to everyone's attention that our secretary, Claire Roth, has put a note in our chat that is also applicable for folks who are in person. We need to know when you are attending these meetings, if you are a person who lives or works, owns property, or is otherwise somehow directly connected to the Whitaker. I think those are the three qualifying. If you go ahead and direct message Claire in the chat that you either work, own, or work, live, or own. Those are the three: work, live, or own in the Whitaker. The reason we keep track of this is because we have an election once a year. And if we know that you've been to at least one meeting, you are allowed to vote in our election. So please, everyone, take a moment and send a quick note to Claire clarifying.
Okay, fantastic. So is there any other public comment? Any questions? Anyone just want to say hi? How are you? All right, going once, going twice. Fantastic. So I'm gonna hand it over to Stephen. Stephen is a volunteer who has actually been working on a project for 2 years. And has done an incredible job, and we're very lucky to have him in his participation. So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to him. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Margaret. First off, a sound check. Can anybody hear me? Excellent. How about in the in-person meeting? You can hear me? Great. It's my honor to welcome Dr. David Lewis to this meeting of WCC. But first off, I want to thank the members of the Social Justice Subcommittee who helped with the report that David will be presenting. And I also want to give a little bit of a background about how this report started out. Timing is the interesting thing here. The timing is perfect for this presentation. This is the beginning of Native American Heritage Month, so we have timed this perfectly. Also, it goes back almost 2 centuries in the history of our neighborhood in Eugene. So it's a long span of time that we're looking at. And the project started 3.5 years ago. It was June 2020. It was in the middle of the Black Lives Matter protests. And since then, it has covered 4 different WCC boards, 4 different chairs, and the momentum for the project was maintained throughout that, which I think is a great achievement. At the meeting in June 2020, more than 100 people were asking for the name of our neighborhood to be changed. And it was discussed at the meeting, and we agreed that we needed to know more about the history of a neighborhood before we could really get into those kind of discussions. So without having any idea what I was letting myself in for, I volunteered to lead that project. It was fairly easy to establish that our neighborhood commemorates the name of the first governor of the state of Oregon. We also quickly established from his diary and his letters that his worldview was shared by very few of us. As we started to study the history of our neighborhood, we found that as we were closer to the present day, documentation was much more available. For example, the history of Black people in Eugene was much better documented. We could find that history. But as we moved back into the 19th century, we found that pioneer tales and settler mythology made it very difficult to really learn what was going on in the middle of the 19th century after Eugene Skinner arrived. We were able to establish that there was forced removal from their ancestral home of local people who were living in this area, and they were moved to the Grand Ronde Reservation to the west of Salem. Reservation was an interesting word to describe this. I usually think of reservations as being hundreds of thousands of acres in the Midwest with one tribe per reservation. This was more in the nature of something like an internment camp rather than a reservation, and that's personal opinion here. There were many different tribes moved to the same area of Oregon, and many of these were hostile to each other. But what it did result in was intertribal marriages of quite extensive. So there are people now who have ancestry with a number of different tribes, and Dr. Lewis is a prime example of that. We found that we needed to keep our work on track and needed outside help. And Dr. Lewis was recommended to us by quite a few people. And eventually we realized that we needed a formal research contract with Dr. Lewis so that he could dive into the history for us and separate out what actually happened from what was in the mythology. The contract with Dr. Lewis was finalized almost a year ago, December last year. And we thought the starting point should be on Eugene Skinner, Jacob Spores in the Coburg area, because the local people here were moved to a temporary reservation on Spores land claim, and John Whitaker, since it was his name on our neighborhood, and their relationship with local native peoples in this area. Dr. Lewis is an assistant professor of anthropology and indigenous studies at OSU. He's a Kalapuya elder and a member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. He's a descendant of Santiam people in the Santiam Basin, the Chinook people closer to the mouth of the Columbia, the Molalla people in the Cascade foothills, and Tacoma down in the Rogue River area. His ancestors were forcibly relocated to the reservation to free up land that could be given by the US government for free to settlers moving in from the East Coast without real reference to the fact that this was land actually owned by the local people. The concept of land ownership was a pretty strange concept. David has served on many organizations and commissions, including managing the Cultural Resources Department at Grand Ronde from 2006 to 2014, a member of the Oregon Heritage Commission from 2009 to 2017, and he chaired the Heritage Commission in 2016 and 2017. He has an extensive record of more than 20 years of collaborative projects with people like us, neighborhood associations, local governments, communities, scholars. His blog, and I will put a link to his blog in the chat after I finish speaking. It's the definitive resource for those wanting to know more about Native peoples in Western Oregon. I'll let him tell you what he found during the project that we commissioned. And I will also put in the chat a link to the report itself. It's just about 200 pages long, and I recommend that you read it. And I will be at the Whitaker event on Saturday. And if you would like to chat with me about it, I'll be there to speak with you further. Or you can email me at my retro AOL address, and I will put that in the chat also. So that's it from me. I've spoken way too long. I've taken a fair amount of David's time, but I will pass it over to Dr. David Lewis. Thank you so much for coming, David.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to now present what I found and some of the history here. And thanks to Stephen for following along and sort of watchdogging the whole process. And thanks to your council for being patient and waiting for when I have time. As you can imagine, as one of the few researchers in this area that look at these kind of things, I get a lot of requests, and I continue to get a lot of requests. So this was a fun project because not much has been written about or known about Native history from Lane County or Eugene, even though I spent a number of years there going to school at U of O, and other folks have, scholars and anthropologists have come from that area. We still don't have a ton of information about the peoples besides maybe what's mostly in this report. Also, just be aware, those of you that are going to read the report, that it's more of an organic document. I didn't have necessarily the sort of years to look into archives and sort of bird dog out all the information I get. And so I've limited my time to just maybe about 6 months. And so that I think I found a good amount of information, enough to sort of give pause and maybe cause other projects to happen off this. So maybe we'll talk about that at the very end, but let me just go into the report, my presentation about the report, at least to your council. Let me, do I have a share screen here? Let's see, share, yeah, okay. Okay, so hopefully I see that. I hope my screen is big enough for you. I don't have it in presentation mode because I find it causes problems in Zoom. I can try it real quick to see how it does, but generally it doesn't work right.
That's fine from here.
Is that what can you see?
Native Peoples History, Eugene and Lane County, give subtitles tribe, It has your name,
You see the notes?
Yes.
the settlers,
Yeah, so we're
and
seeing,
it says no notes underneath that.
okay, well,
Notes and it says settlers had very little interaction with tribe.
okay, let me just go back to the original thing then. I'll just have to, yeah, because just for some reason I don't never get the settings for this right. So I'm just gonna do it like this. Okay, there you go. Share. Okay, that should work then. Can you, I hope you can see that.
Yes.
I made it pretty big in the middle, so there you go. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, first off, there's some really interesting understandings. One of the reasons why we don't have a lot of information about the tribes from the mid 1850s from most settlers. I was having a hard time finding a lot of records from settlers, except for the earliest settlers. I figured out was probably because most of the settlers in Eugene didn't arrive till about 1852. And tribes were removed in around 1856, actually exactly in 1856. So there's only about a 3 or 4 year window there for most people to have any interaction with the large number of tribes, or the few tribes left in the South Valley. And so we don't see then a lot of records in the archives, except for those people that maybe are related to the original settlers, the original 5 or 6 or 10 settlers that were in the beginning, and you maybe heard their names. Eugene Skinner, Elijah Bristow, Joseph Spores. I mean, the Halls, those folks, or the Hills. I'm sorry, the Hills, those folks. So that's where most of the information comes from, is these few families that were here early on and had some 1840s and early 1850s experiences that predate maybe this era, what I'll call the lost wagon train era, because a lot of those people, the initial settlers, came from that lost wagon train that was found and rescued in the Cascades and brought down into the Eugene area. Many of those people decided to settle in what became Eugene and later on Springfield as well, and filled in a lot of the small towns in the area. And so that's why we don't have a ton of information from them, from the area. John Whitaker arrives in this later settlement, not from the wagon train, but from another. He comes, I think, up from California, if I remember right. He had little or no interaction with Native people in his own records, his personal records. I think his daughter has some records of significance. I forget who she's married to, but I didn't look really closely at the family or the settler histories, because I was really contracted to do Native American history. And so I didn't feel like I need to spend the time looking at the settler history, which is actually pretty well written about in other history books in the area. So anyway, John Whitaker doesn't have a lot in his records. He did, though, like has been sort of sensed by their council, benefit quite a bit from other people in the area taking the land and free land in the Donation and Land Claims Act, and taken that essentially from Native peoples before the treaty was actually signed and ratified by the federal government, so by Congress. And then another big understanding, I think it's been pretty common knowledge, but I've kind of confirmed that through a number of stories, is that the earliest settlers, we know Skinner has talked about like this a lot, but also Bristow, Hills, and Spores, they all had experiences, but they all were influenced to move where they moved because of the environmental character of the valley. Let me move on. So we know that this story has been kind of rolling around Eugene for a number of years. Skinner was influenced by the tribes to build his cabin on the side of the butte. And because of that, which we call it what became Skinner's Butte, because of that, because he got advice from the Calipuians. So that's the story, and it seems to hold true for many accounts from various people. Hallie Huntington and Phoebe Kinsey are quoted as saying that they were always telling Skinner that he should build higher on the hill because of the big water that come and get him, sure, but all he lost was all his livestock, his cattle. He saw all of his livestock, they were swimming desperately down the river. So Skinner, while he did situate his cabin up on the side of the butte, he did use the flatlands below for cattle grazing, likely before there were fences or anything else or any other settlers. And then he did experience a flood event where he lost a lot of his cattle, his livestock at that event. So that was something. But the Calapooians then kind of influence where Eugene is situated, really, by the way they advise him. And that's pretty interesting. You'd almost say the tribes, were key advisors to where Eugene is situated today. Mainly because Skinner, he donates much of his land at a fairly reasonable price to Lane County to form the city. I looked at some of those records, and it was pretty interesting to see that he and his wife were signing off and donating their land for downtown Eugene on several occasions, and that's really because of where his advice he got from the Calapooians. I didn't really look a lot, like I said, closely at Whitaker himself, because he didn't have a lot of information about the Calapooians or the tribes in the area. We do know, I think that it's been common knowledge, Stephen and I have talked about this somewhat, that he had some land claims up near Cottage Grove, up about where the reservoir is today on the Row River. But I did find that there are previous records of land claims. He took donation land claims down in around Bailey Hill area, and I was able to find the exact record in the state records of where his land claim was, and I outlined it in the report and on this map you see on this slide. And this was a donation land claim. So the donation land claims were, again, like Steve mentioned, free land that you can get if you settled the land and then proved up on it within 5 years, which means you stuck around. And his other land, I figured out that later on, his other land was actually recorded under the Roseville land office, Roseburg land office, and those land claims were not donation land claims. Those were land claims that people could get with a later act where they could buy additional lands if they wanted to, and so Whitaker bought additional lands up in the Cottage Grove area, lands that almost exactly matched the amount of acreage he needed to fill in the 640 acres of a settler, because his land claims in Eugene were almost about half of that, around 320 acres, and so he basically got almost another 320 acres in the Cottage Grove area. And as you know, later on he bought more land in what was considered now it's considered downtown Eugene, a part of downtown Eugene, kind of a expansion part of Eugene, and that became, like you suspect, the Whitaker neighborhood. But he was, an entrepreneur. He had farms. He became governor, and he used his money to buy land and gain quite a bit of wealth off that land. I also found that there's very few records of the tribes between 1856 and around 1880s. We start to see records of the tribes appear in around 1870s in newspaper accounts. Since I finished the report a couple months ago, I have found a couple more records that maybe we can add on in the sort of organic nature of the report in federal records. And so in the next few months, I'll be adding those in as I can transcribe them, and you'll get the benefit of that with a new edition of the report. But some of those early settlements or early accounts of Native peoples in Eugene, or after removal to reservations and before the 20th century, were based on this notion of Native people coming to now what's called white settlements or towns, and they were not allowed to live inside the town. They had to sort of live outside of town in what's been pejoratively called squaw camps. And this was a pretty common practice all throughout the West. We find it in California, we find it in Colorado and other places, and in Oregon. And in Oregon alone, I found records of these squaw camps or Indian encampments in Oregon City, in Hood River, in Tillamook, in Salem, in Albany, Portland, pretty much, every major town that's been around a while has had these sort of Indian encampments, squaw camps, as they're called in newspapers. And they were settlements, again, outside of town, outside the city limits at the time, in places that were where, there was some water supply, usually like along a creek or a river, and where the native people were not molested. And these are also places where other undesirables would be accepted. Generally, Black people who could not own land in Oregon at the time because of the laws in Oregon would be found in some of these camps. Probably Latinos, maybe Chinese people, criminals would actually inhabit these camps to sort of hide out from the law. And in the Eugene area, there was at least 3 places they had these camps. One was described as exactly across from the Mill Race Dam, across the river from downtown Eugene, which is technically looks like it's at where Altmaker Park is in Springfield by the I-5 overcrossing area. So that area looks like it's never been developed. I've talked to people in the park there. There may or may not be anything there. There's never been any kind of survey, so we don't know exactly where that was. But there was a camp there that was occupied on a regular basis, like every single year for years, while hop picking was a big thing in the area. And also there's some implications of those camps were every year they were occupied around between August and October. So that's pretty interesting. And then there's another place maybe up the river or down the river a little ways towards almost Springfield, in the Glenwood area. There were hop fields there. I think CV's hop yard was in that area, so they had they had Indian encampments there that were off of the property. They would not live on the property, live off the property. And there was another encampment place at where the McKinsey meets the highway at going up into the Cascades, and so going out of Springfield. And so there was an encampment place there, and there's some pretty interesting descriptions of the encampments, what they were doing in these places. I also found that when I was reading through all these histories, and just to mention it, that there's been a lot of writing and rewriting of some of these histories from various perspectives, some of which may, because of the nature of sort of rewriting history over and over and over again by amateur and probably volunteer historians, may be incorrect. So there may be a lot of incorrectness out there in various histories that people maybe have heard in in the neighborhoods or talking to family or whatever. But it's important to go back to the archival records to really find what the histories are, and to sort of, sometimes you got to like center it down on what looks to be the right history, because we don't have at times the actual account from the actual person. We don't have like a recording from native people talking about their own history. So there's that. So let me move on. I'll return to the encampments in a minute, but the tribe at Eugene was called the Chafin Band of Calapooians. They are sometimes represented on maps as a little triangle on the map, but they appeared to occupy all of the Eugene, even Springfield area, and were related to all the other tribes in the area, the Winfilly, the Yoncalla, the Chillamella, and the Mountain Malala. There was lots of interrelationships between all the tribes. It's not only a reservation thing. We know that upwards of 32 tribes were placed at Grand Ronde, and that caused a lot of interrelationships, intermarriages. But it was always the case that tribes would intermarry to other tribes, tribal people. You were not supposed to marry within your own village, and so intermarriage was a pretty common, very common thing all throughout Oregon, as far as I can tell. Like Stephen has said, the Californians were moved to the reserves, or some reserves in the area in 1855. There was a couple of reserves kind of related to the Mohawk area, the Chafin and the Mohawk Reserve. There was a Tekapo Reserve. There was a Chamapo Reserve, kind of over by the Muddy Creek area. And I haven't heard of a Chelamilla Reserve, but there could have been one of those too. Some of the reserves are not well described. But those were all started around March of 55. People remained on the reserves there until they were sent to Spores Ferry and then to Corvallis in around February 56. And then they were, by that, within a few days, they were at Grand Ronde, the reservation, by sometime in April of 56. So what's surprising is that the population from the South Valley is not very large. There was maybe a little over 100 people altogether, 100 Native people. So, and this caused a lot of questions. We know that the South Valley, because of the late period of its settlement compared to the rest of Oregon, the rest of Northern Oregon, were settled later. So we don't understand why, quite exactly why there was less people, except for perhaps there may have been delay in the diseases that moved down from the north to the south, and so there may have been a few years delay for malaria to affect the Southern Valley populations. It also may have stuck around longer, for all we know, because there was quite a bit of wetland in the area, as well described, and so the mosquitoes may have bred pretty well in the area and kept that population down for several years. So malaria was a big factor in the north. We see death of about 97% of the people by 1830, 1831. And so that's more than 20 years before the major settlement of Eugene. So the biggest problem is because Native people didn't pass on records, didn't keep records of their time at the back then, and there wasn't a lot of settlers. There aren't any records of that South Valley to speak of. That talks about Native people and their populations and things like that. The earliest records that we have of any detail is, David Douglas, but he didn't pass through the Eugene area. He passed over towards the Long Tom area, and we have the Wilkes expedition, the U.S. exploring expedition, 1841, which gives us the first detailed, records of this area, the Eugene area. We don't find that conflict was an issue at all in the history. The only conflict that we find is in the actions of Elijah Bristow. He would seem to be a very violent man, was very harsh with Native people. I uncovered an account, which I'd never seen before, of him interacting with Klamath people. The Klamath apparently scared his oxen one time. He didn't like that, and so he shot a Klamath man. I'm giving the short version of the story. And then the next year they come and they have a meeting with him where they use the Molalla people in the area, the Mountain Molalla, as the go-betweens to negotiate what's going to happen. The Bristow acts so violently, he says he's going to kill any Klamath he sees, that they decide to leave for 20 years, and they don't come back for 20 years at least. So that's the story, and it seems to have held up because we don't find any records of Klamath for a number of years in the Eugene area. So that's the only true conflict we have in the area. We don't know if the story of the Hudson's Bay Company man coming into the area is true or not. There's some indication that it may not be true. Some people just disbelieve it. We know that in that story that he is killed by local people, but there's some doubt whether the story actually happened because I personally haven't found the actual account. And it may take a while to find that actual account because it's probably in Hudson's Bay records in Ottawa, Canada. And I didn't get funding to go to Ottawa, Canada to do that research. So, and if you want to fund me for that, I'm perfectly willing to go there and spend a few days in the archives looking through the Hudson's Bay records. But right at this point, we're not there. So overall, I'm not finding a ton of records that relate directly with the neighborhood itself, the Whitaker neighborhood. You know, we don't have that fine detail. Whitaker neighborhood, as you know, was established really mostly in the 20th century, and so we don't really have a ton of records that pin down exactly where people lived. We know that from several accounts in the report that there were scattered families, probably not living in large villages, living as scattered individual families that lived in upland areas, on hillsides, in hillsides sometimes, and maybe perhaps in the Mohawk area, but that's about it. We don't find major any kind of settlement in the Eugene area, mainly because I think we start thinking about settlement patterns of Native people, the Calipuians. They didn't want to live on the wetland. I mean, they didn't want to live on the flatland because it got wet, and so they would live up above the flatland in the upper areas where it stayed dry, and so that was pretty clear from the records that we have. So back to Warm Springs encampment, something more fun. This has raised a lot of really fun discussions between me and several other scholars in the area. We didn't know there was such a history of encampments, Native people coming over the mountains to camp. We found that these people were primarily called Warm Springs people. I don't know if they're the original Warm Springs tribes or they were the people from Warm Springs. I predict that they're probably just people from Warm Springs that came from the reservation itself. They could be from any of the tribes that went to Warm Springs. But their style, they're described in the accounts, appears to be that of just like you find in the Columbia, where people were fishing, and that's what is described. They said they would. One of the descriptions suggests they would come to the encampments in the area and doing the same thing they had done previously. So it suggests that there was a history of these encampments that predates Eugene, predates Lane County altogether. That this was a cultural thing where some of the families of the Warm Springs people, that maybe the Tenino or other peoples, would come over into the southern Willamette Valley and set up what they called salmon fish drying racks. And in all the records, they arrive in August or September. So this has raised a lot of questions, like what kind of fish were they getting? Because in a lot of records, there's some people that in the biological records of the valley, there's people that don't think there was a fall run of Chinook. But one of the things they did when they came is they would bring craft goods to trade with the local people, the white people in the area. They would and what's constantly described as gloves, leather gloves. And so we do have a couple examples of leather gloves in the museum. And so I've now taken pictures of those gloves and sent those pictures to both the Warm Springs and Umatilla tribes to see if they recognize any of the artwork on the beadwork on the gloves, to see if possibly it could come from them. We also have, a vest that's described as coming perhaps from Umatilla. So, and we actually have a name, Susan or Annie Cow. So I'm asking the question at Umatilla. They haven't found records yet. I did find one account of a man from Umatilla last name Cow, that perhaps he had a daughter or a wife or something that perhaps came into the area. I can't think of why the Umatillas would come to Eugene. They don't seem to be the people that were setting up the encampments, unless they were related to the Warm Springs. Other than perhaps the rodeo. I know Eugene rodeos used to be a big thing, still kind of a big thing. A lot of Native people come for the rodeos and be a part of that. And also they would regularly ride in the parades. So 4th of July parade, rodeo parades were a very common thing in the area. And so we have pictures from the museum Lane County Historical Museum of Native people riding in the parades. So this could be a much larger history that we haven't quite completely revealed yet. The idea of the salmon, having salmon fish drying racks up on the McKinsey and by Eugene is pretty interesting. Again, current biological writings, in fact, this last year, state that there was only a spring run of salmon in the Willamette Valley, not a fall run. This is mainly because scientists have thought since the 1960s that it would be difficult for salmon to jump over the falls in the fall because the water is lower at Willamette Falls, and it's difficult for a salmon to jump 35 feet. The problem with that is that we have now these stories of people arriving to process salmon in the fall. So what are they using for salmon? It's possible there was a fall run that we have not really got down to how greatly the Willamette Falls were changed by settlement. You know, how were they changed with concrete and other additions to the falls, making it harder for salmon perhaps to jump the falls. Also, there's some indication that we have perhaps less or rainfall today, less water overall in the basin because of changes in water patterns in the whole valley. So there may be less water in the fall than there used to be, which I'm going to be talking to some biologists and other sort of water hydrology experts in the area to see if any of this sort of theorizing on my part makes sense to them, you know, but it's going to create a stir once we start working on that. So I'm wondering if this is a attritional pattern where they initially were coming over into the valley to catch maybe the last run of salmon for the season, process it, do a little bit of elk hunting, and maybe dig in some camas and getting some acorns would not be untoward. And then in the meantime, by the 20th century, or late 19th, early 20th century, hops became a big thing. And so they found out they could hire on to local farms, work for the day picking hops, and therefore make a little bit of money doing that. So most of our records of them hop picking, but there's some other implications here suggesting that they were doing other things too. Very interesting. This picture is not of the hop, perhaps the drying racks here in the Eugene area. This is up on the white salmon on the Columbia, but this is kind of what they would have looked like, the drying racks. Maybe in a smaller, you know, profile, but something like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We do have a few other things on the agenda, so we
Okay.
can do like 5 more minutes.
Sure, I could.
Maybe you can take a couple of minutes before you're done if anyone has any questions.
Sure,
And
yeah.
I want to say too, I know how hard that you all have worked on this and that you've discovered things that we didn't know before.
Yeah.
And that this is going to go a long way, and we're very proud to have been part of it. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No problem. Yeah, I get it. You guys have other things to do. So another big thing is the sort of environmental character of Eugene is pretty interesting. The fact that a lot of the stories talk about there being a huge wetland. There's stories now that I've uncovered of them finding burnt stumps on the plains, of noting the native people would burn the land. So these kind of add on to other stories that we have from other areas of the valley that suggest that the Calipuians in the South Valley are doing the same as Calipuians in the North Valley. And that watery texture of the land, much like Western wetlands today, is a new thing that maybe we can bring out somewhere in later on as a display and exhibit in the museum. We're going to do that. I have records of the Chafin. I suggest you read those things in the report. We have names of the people. We can follow a little bit of their history for a couple of years, perhaps. These are pretty interesting things. There was a guy named Skookum John, and there was a Tai Tom, and there was these people in the area that we have now census records of, and we can actually follow all the way to the Grand Ronde Reservation. This is a census record here where it has some people mentioned. Here's a John right here and a Bob right here and a Jim right here in other records from settlers. So as time goes forward, we're going to be looking at these things a little closer and perhaps do some more linkages between these people and their histories in the area. And then let's see. There is this story of the threat that the Skinners had at one point when they first moved their cabin. They were being threatened by the local people. That's a pretty common technique of tribes to sort of like discourage people from remaining around by presenting a very mean character, by threatening them. There was never actual attack. There was just a threat and a lot of loud noises. And the stories go that, you know, Skinner had a meeting with them and they settled things afterwards. And there are a number of indications that settlers in the area, when they came here, they were a little more respectful than other areas, and they actually were regularly, annually paying people for their use of their land until they were removed. And so that was a pretty consistent story that I found in the records too. So again, this is an organic report. I'll be adding to it as I go. And there's other folks that want to see this, and I've talked to Stephen about this, and he's approved a few things where we can use it as the foundation of exhibits at the museum. The Lane County Human Rights Commission wants to see it. There's some external exhibits going to happen with Eugene Parks, and there may be some more work in the Springfield area too. So it looks like this is going to be a growing and perhaps expanding report with other folks involved, and your donation to the report for these things would be welcome, is welcome, and clearly we're going to identify the Whitaker Community Council as having donated that portion to a lot of efforts around Eugene that are unveiling history. So that's really, I mean, I had more stuff. Clearly, there's a lot to report, but that's good enough for me. If you guys are good with that, I can answer questions.
Yeah, do we have any questions? Okay, I think that you were pretty thorough there. There's some great information. And like I said, I will have been here. I was part of the board when we voted to go ahead and fund this and make this happen. And I know that you all have worked very hard on it. And we're really excited to see where it goes.
I could just repeat, I will be at Saturday's event in the Washington Jefferson Park. And if anybody has questions, they can give them to me there. And if I can't answer them, I will make sure we get the questions to David.
Okay, we do have one question here. I'm sorry, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Megan. I was curious when you mentioned hops, was that, what was it used, like agriculturally for beer or food or
Yeah, the Willamette Valley used to be one of the largest producers of hops in the world. There was a hop blight in around the late 1950s, early 60s that destroyed many of the hop fields. Hops are coming back in the valley. Some of the main centers for growing hops are Eugene, Corvallis, Wheatland Ferry, Independence, Monmouth, Salem. So there was quite a bit of hop growing in the valley, much more than today. And Native people are pretty well known for picking hops on a seasonal basis in the valleys, coming off the reservations on there every year. People from Grand Ronde, Slets, Warm Springs, Klamath even came here. I did want to mention, like Steve had mentioned, I am coming to Eugene tomorrow, and there is a presentation at the Longhouse at U of O tomorrow night if you want to look at U of O events and somebody wants to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Do we have any other questions? Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis.
Well, thank you.
And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. I'm sure you're busy and you have things to do. So if you want to bow out now, that's perfectly fine as well. Whatever works best for you, but thank you once again for taking the time and not making the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes,
I will be bowing out. Thank you so much.
thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna hand it over to Doriandra Smith. She's gonna kick off what we're doing with the disaster resilient campaign. And give us a little bit of an update on the health and safety committee.
That was a humbling presentation and hard to follow.
Dorianda, we're having a trouble hearing you on the Zoom. Can you speak directly into the microphone, please?
Yeah, we were having a feedback. I think we solved it. I just want to take a moment and give the update about the Whitaker Community Council Public Health and Safety event that's coming up this Saturday on November 11th. This is a great event that's in partnership with the Oregon Health Authority. And we will be at Washington Jefferson Park at the basketball courts from 11 to 3 p.m. So some of the great things going on that day for us will be kind of a roundtable of education about disaster resiliency. We'll be having a group of different speakers. Our community colleague, Jen Schack, is the executive director of the Willamette Farm and Food Coalition. She'll be doing a really neat talk about victory gardens, a modern version of how we're dealing with food and creating food for resiliency. We'll also have a biologist and aquaculturist discuss waterless sanitation, because at some point we may lose our sewers, and something we all have to think about is what we do. So we're also going to have two other really neat guest speakers. One of them is a former wildland firefighter, and he'll be talking to us about what's called an INCH bag. INCH stands for in case you can't come home. So these are bags designed to think about long-term resiliency if we are displaced in the community or specifically from your home. Then we've also got our Springfield CERT district leader coming. She will kick off a conversation about how to put together a go bag that's very specific to cultural or family needs. So basically, what are the things that you need if you are displaced temporarily to find comfort and stay functioning? So also then that we're really proud to present a giveaway that we'll be doing to help community get their go bags started. So we'll have some really neat basics that one would want to stock a bag with. We'll have first aid kits and safety blankets, those Mylar emergency blankets. And also we'll be giving away $25 gift cards to the first 40 participants. And these can be used over at Bruns Red Apple. And that will be kind of to further stock your bag. What else can you put in there that you'll need? So let's see. We've also got some great other community partners coming. We'll have our City of Eugene Emergency Manager, Sierra, coming to speak with us and meet. We'll have our representatives from CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. We'll have eWeb there to talk about their supply calendar and their big pattern that helps you really budget and time as you build your security supplies for your home or family. We'll also have a great band, Boxcar Figaro is coming, so we can listen to some great music. And lastly, we have our partners in the community shift community cycles. And these folks will come out with a pop-up bike repair. So if you have a bike and you're thinking about the importance of that mobility, if we have issues of streets down and trees down, this is a great place to come talk to those mechanics about getting a trailer in the bike or expanding your capacity to transport items through the city. So I think I've covered everything. It's gonna be fun and we really love for your support. If you can come out, it's a great first kickoff for us. We will have more of these similar to how we have our wellness clinics. But this is a great first start, so I hope that you all see us there. Also, I just want to introduce, we have a new social media manager with us. We're really excited to have her on board and we're grateful that she's with us this week as we kick off our first event. She's with us tonight. Her name is Kelsey Mullaney. So we just want to welcome you.
Hi, hello. Oh, you got my dogs too.
Hi, dogs. Yeah, Kelsey, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what else you do? Because it's great.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Kelsey Mullaney. I'm just started pretty much this week, started doing social media for WCC and have been really pushing out a lot of things for this event on Saturday. Some of you may have already gotten an email, and a bunch of other posts will be going out. But my day job, I actually am the program communication specialist at Food for Lane County. So I am familiar with the nonprofit sector and the different needs of our community.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. It's nice to put a face with the name Kelsey. I'm Margaret, so it's nice to meet you.
Perfect.
I wanna to please put everybody towards the chat. Claire Roth is our secretary for the Whitaker Community Council, and it's important for our records that we know everyone that's attended the meeting. So if you can please just message her in the chat, who you are, whether you live, work, own property, a business in the Whitaker, or not, and what that does is it allows us to keep records which we make public, as well as when April comes, you will have an opportunity if you would like to come and run for a board seat, but if not, at least to come and vote. Yes, Gail.
Just to clarify, nobody's private information will be made public. We keep that safe and secure for you, so don't be afraid to give us your info. It's strictly for our record purposes, and we won't share it with anyone.
Yeah, we don't share the list, we just, yeah. Thank you, Gail. So yeah, you can see Claire put a long comment in the section about it. Okay, so now I would like everyone to welcome Megan. Megan is a volunteer. She lives in the Whitaker. She is a member of the Health and Safety Committee and is working on the disaster preparedness as well. So I'm going to give you can sit wherever you want, and I'll give you the mic. Wherever you're welcome.
Megan, I been involved with the safety group for quite a while, but also a CERT, which is a community emergency response team volunteer, and it's really concerned about making sure that our neighborhood is prepared in the case where we don't have support from emergency response folks and ambulance. We really need to take care of each other. And in the case of they are okay. And how's that better now? Or
Better.
a flood. We may find that our neighbors are people that we can call on for help. And I am supporting the Whitaker neighborhood in a process that some people call map your neighborhood. Sometimes I call it getting neighborhood ready. But it's a process where we can gather with our neighbors and learn how to take care of each other when emergency response isn't available. So I'm going to just share a slide and try that. And so what is this? Snap your neighborhood stuff. Why do we do this?
We might be on our own for hours with our neighbors, for days, for weeks following a disaster. The real first responders might be our neighbors. The emergency response folks may be overwhelmed dealing with other immediately life-threatening situations. And so, people we can count on, maybe the people right in our neighborhood. One way we can prepare, and two, we might call map your neighborhood. And what is this? It's a process where you and your neighbors, usually those on your block or your street, can get together to do a series of things. Learn the first 9 steps to take immediately following a disaster, to take care of your home and protect your neighborhood, to identify the skills and equipment that each neighbor has. That might be something like, hey, I have a medical background, I know first aid, or I have a crowbar, or I have a chainsaw and I know how to use it. We create a neighborhood map together, identifying where natural gas might be that might need to be shut off in the case of an earthquake, for example, where there can be gas leaks. We create a neighborhood contact group that identifies people with special needs, for example, who has a kid, who has a dog, who actually can't get out of the house without support. And we also can learn how to assess our neighborhood, walk the street to check on folks, and take some action to support each other. And I did this with I'll tell you a little bit more about what it involves, but I did this with my neighbors over by Sladden Park. And we came away really knowing each other and being much better connected. I, after the process, knew the names of almost everyone on my street. I knew some of them already, but I knew them more closely. I knew a little bit about whether they were willing to pitch in and help out. And I have their phone numbers, and I can use that in other situations too. I used it when COVID hit and just wanted to make sure everyone was okay. So it's a real community building, connecting activity. So there's a lot of reason to do it for disaster preparedness, but just the community and neighborhood connection is super valuable for all kinds of reasons. And for those of you who are in the room and those of you who are not, the macro neighborhood book looks like. It's a paper booklet that we all go through together. And just so you're not getting overwhelmed just thinking about it, I will lead you through the process if you choose to do that. You and your neighbors through the process. So this is an example of what one of the pages looks like, and the steps that we take. We take care of our loved ones first. We put on, sometimes we might put on a hard hat or a helmet or sturdy shoes. We check our natural gas. We shut off our water. We put out a sign, an okay sign, to let people know either that we're okay or we need help, or if there's no sign up, we might assume we need help because we weren't able to put up a sign. We put out our fire extinguisher to make it available to others who need it. This is a little example of the okay sign that we use. And it's all in the booklet, so we have a copy of it. We all decide together of a neighborhood gathering site. So where are we gonna go to meet? On my street, that's my front porch, which is pretty big and it's covered and it's right in the middle of the block. So I've said we will meet here. We all agree on what that spot will be, and then we also identified a care center. It's a place not where the hubbub is, not on my porch, not at my house. It's a couple houses over, where that's a quiet spot for people to go who might need care. Maybe they need a little first aid. Maybe it's where the kids are, so they're out of the way of the grown-ups who are maybe going to be on our radios and things. So we agree on the spot, another spot, a care center. And then this is an example of what the neighborhood skills and equipment inventory page looks like. We write down people's names in it, but like Michael and Judabeth is on the first aid, has first aid skills. So-and-so knows plumbing. Somebody's got a camp stove. Somebody knows how to use a walkie-talkie. And we put names here. And then this is just an example of what our neighborhood map looks like. And basically draw a map of your street, and we ended up, I didn't put them because they're confidential, but in the end, I had everybody's name here. And they had pets, maybe a little notes about them too, but the main notes go here in this inventory sheet. And this is where we put people's contact info. And we've got the opportunity, I'll be at the disaster resilience event this weekend on Saturday with a table. I'll have the booklets to show people. I'll have an example of the big neighborhood map we can do together. And I'll have flyers for folks who want to do this. And if you do, your process would be that you would reach out to the Whitaker Community Council Gmail address, and I'll put that info in the chat here in a minute. And then with a note that says, I want help with the neighborhood ready or map your neighborhood. And then Margaret would send a message to me and say, hey, got somebody. And you would let your neighbors know, pick a day and time that you want to do this with your neighbors. You would invite all your neighbors on your street, any that you want, and not those that you don't. So you can choose to do this at your own house. And if there are people you're uncomfortable having in your home, you just don't invite them. It's not a big deal. You choose who you do this with. And then, and all the information that's shared is only whatever people feel like sharing with each other. And then I would join you that day and lead you through the process. And you would go away with some connection and good resources and support. That's a little summary of it. And I'll put the note in the notes how in the chat how you can ask me for help with that.
And we will put it on the
Great. And in case you couldn't hear Margaret, she said we'll put it on the neighborhood page and the Whitaker Community Council page as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Megan regarding this? I know she's put a lot of work into it as well. Who thinks that they would like to be involved in this on their street? There we go, Gail, that sounds great. All right, we have a few people that are excited about it, so please watch for updates, reach out. Just make sure that you get your name on a list, and we'll make a mailing list or something along those lines. You're good. Yes, and just to remind everyone, please come down to Washington Jefferson Park. Megan will be there as well, and she'll be doing a presentation at the park and speaking at the park regarding this. Okay. Next up, we have Julie Bowman. Thank you very much. I think so, yeah.
I thought I'd get up so you guys can see my face. So I learned about this program called Adopt One Block last week. A resident of River Road brought it to the attention of the council, and I got really excited about it. It's a grassroots effort that started in Portland. A guy by the name of Frank Moscow came up with the idea in 2018 because he was really tired of seeing all the trash on the streets in Portland. And he started working on the idea, and he finally got to launch his website in 2020. Right now, the program is active in Oregon and Washington, and we have 10,000 blocks that have been adopted. So basically, when you become a block ambassador, you adopt a block. I adopted the block that I live on, but it can be any block, something near to you that you're going to be able to walk frequently. And what that means is Adopt One Block is going to send you free supplies, and you're going to agree to clean your block when and how you see fit. So it's super independent, it's super easy. There are no meetups, there's no schedule. You get to clean your block when and how you want. Once a week is suggested. You have no requirement to clean anything that you feel is out of your ability or out of your scope. The free supplies they're offering are a 5-gallon bucket or heavy duty trash bag, a trash grabber, gloves, and if you think you need them, a sharps container. On their platform, you can communicate with one another if you want to via a platform, but this does require that you agree with the permissions. So if you don't agree, no one will communicate with you without your consent. They do offer days of appreciation right now in Portland today, celebrating their 10,000th block. They are having a gathering at Hop Craft, I think, a brewery. All of that is totally optional and independent. Gail has a little visual that maybe she can share on the screen. So basically, I wanted to bring this to the neighborhood and to members of the council and see if people have questions and if they're interested in promoting this in the neighborhood. Certainly it's something that each individual can do on their own. Gail, if you have a chance, will you put that on the screen? The thing that I sent you.
I'm so sorry, Julia. I misunderstood you and didn't realize I needed to download something. So if you'll give me a minute, I'll go into my mail and find it and I'll be back.
You know what? It really doesn't matter. It's just a simple visual showing their logo. They're at adoptoneblock.org and it just shows the steps to sign up. You go on the site, you enter your information, you choose your block, and then they send you the supplies. And so it's super simple. It took me like 3 minutes to sign up. And so I'm interested in feedback. Are other people interested in this? Margaret?
I have a question. So if other people are interested in it and would like to do it, are you the contact person that can help them do it?
I'm not, but if people have questions, they can. So the block that I signed up for is the block I live on. And I'm not even signed up for my whole entire block, like the square city block that I live on. I'm basically from my corner to the alley.
Do you have a link? You can click on it, go and.
So that's at www.adoptoneblock.org. So we can put that in the chat. Okay, put that on the page, yeah. And so I'm now a block ambassador, but that doesn't, you know, I'm special, right? But that doesn't make me in charge of anybody else. That everybody who signs up is a block ambassador.
Okay, if you could email me the link.
Yeah, totally will.
Or send it to Kelsey, and I will make sure to get it out there.
Right. Anybody else have questions? Are other people excited about this? I think it's a cool program. I already cleaned the street in front of my house. They had me at free trash grabber, right? I'm excited about getting free supplies to clean what I'm already doing. And it's cool to be motivated to go walk around the block with the intention of cleaning.
Well, you know, we used to have the Great Whitaker cleanup.
Yes.
And it was something that's happened for years and years in the Whitaker, and this is definitely something that we could pick a day and get some street ambassadors, and the council could provide water, and maybe we could do some pizza or something afterwards.
Absolutely.
And all meet and just get together and clean up the neighborhood.
And I love the Whitaker cleanup, but we need to do it every week, right? Because the Whitaker cleanup was fantastic, but a couple weeks after it happened, we were kind of right back where we were. So the idea here is everybody gets out every week, ideally, and does it small scale.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. My stuff hasn't come yet. I'm awaiting my delivery from Amazon, but I just signed up last week, so it'll be here soon. When it comes, I'll take a picture.
Does anyone have any questions? Can you all hear me? Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? All All right, one thing that, we're gonna give it to Saoirse here in a minute, she's gonna talk about fill your pantry. But one thing that I wanna tell everybody, is that we have a lot of committee work going on right now. We have a lot of volunteer things, we have a lot of opportunity, like what Julie is doing with, cleaning her block and all of that has come through the council. You do not have to be a board member to participate in what's happening. One nice thing about our charter is that it states specifically that you do not have to be a board member to be on a committee. We would love to have more people on the Health and Safety Committee, which is the committee right now that is doing all of this. And if you live in the neighborhood, if you want to participate, it gives you the opportunity to vote on anything that we vote on that is within that committee. And you can have a voice and get involved as much or as little as you would like. It's a great opportunity to get involved in the neighborhood and to really see, what we're doing, and we're making some big changes. We're rebuilding. So a lot of us are really excited about that. And the nice thing about the council is that everyone has an equal voice. So we may have a board, and there may be a chair and a vice chair and all of that, but for instance, when the council votes once a week or once a month, we have to have an actual board meeting where the board votes. But we want to talk to people about that, and we're here for you guys. That being said, we're gonna give it to Saoirse, and she's gonna talk about fill your pantry, because we all understand that if something does happen, and if we do have, it's only a matter of time before we have some type of disaster. We're all gonna need to eat, and we're gonna need food. And Saoirse is the vice chair, and I'm just gonna hand it over to her.
Hello, everyone. I'm Saoirse. I'm the vice chair of the Whitaker Community Council. And I just want to mention a couple things about an event that I am organizing for Willamette Farm and Food Coalition. I'm the event and outreach coordinator for them, and they're a local nonprofit in town. The event is called Fill Your Pantry, and I'm about to put some information in the chat so that you have that as well. But it's an annual event, and it's a farm direct bulk food buying event. So for folks living in the community, they can pre-order their local, their favorite local products from farmers and producers in the area throughout the entire month of October, and then they can pick up that food in all in one day at the Lane Event Center on November 12th. So it's a good way for folks to stock their pantries right before the winter months and get some good food to do to preserve through the winter months. We have a couple of food demos happening at 1 and 2 p.m. And so, like Margaret just said, tying into the disaster resiliency efforts, knowing how to work with food and how to preserve it is really good to have on hand. We live in a fertile valley, and it's good to know what to do with your food. So folks did pre-orders, but we also have a day of shopping. So we're gonna have over 40 vendors this year from the local area, and we're also gonna have nonprofits that are going to be tabling at the event. We're going to have live music all day from the Willamette vendors, Boxcar and a couple other local favorites. And there will be hot food. So it's a good event. It's a good thing to gather and meet people at. We have hot cider as well that's going to be fresh pressed. And we accept EBT, which is SNAP, or the Oregon Trail Card, for day of purchases and pre-orders. So yeah, that's a lot of information all at once. And I'll link the website in the chat as well.
I just have one question. Saoirse, would you please clarify that there is the ability to buy things the day of, even if you weren't a foresightful person and didn't order anything in October? That is correct. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And
Thank
we
you.
have some exclusive day of vendors who weren't a part of the pre-order period. And so if you show up, there's some exclusive people there that you would be able to shop otherwise.
Did you tell everyone that you run the Whitaker?
Oh, I didn't. I also manage the Whitaker Community Market. That's my connection to the Whitaker. And the Whitaker Community Market's actually co-hosting the event. That's why we've been able to offer $100 double up food buck match to customers who are placing pre-orders. And so for $100 of your EBT budget, customers were able to get $200 worth of food. And we were able to do that because of the Whitaker Community Market funding and working together with Willamette Farm and Food Corp.
All right. Do we have any questions about that? Okay, so right now is where we talk about ideas for our next meeting or ideas for things that we can do in the future. And I have gotten a message from a couple of people, and someone just messaged me that I'm gonna assume, Shariba, are you in the meeting? Gail, is Shariba here? So, and she's not the first person to ask me, and just so
We had some folks leave. I think she was here.
okay. So I've had a few people ask me about the Thanksgiving dinner. And I think for a little while it appeared that the Whitaker Community Council did the Thanksgiving every year, and doing a little research. Thea, maybe you could clear this up for me, but I think it was actually Food for Lane County that did it. And I saw a post today that someone is doing it in Springfield, same Thanksgiving dinner that we did, and they're doing it at Finn's Drive-In on Main Street. Doesn't cost anything, no questions, nothing. And it's put on by Food for Lane County, and I do believe that it's the same Thanksgiving dinner that we did in the Whitaker. Unfortunately, when we did the Thanksgiving dinner, we did it at the Head Start building, and they did have a kitchen and all of that available, which is no longer, that's 4J owned it, I believe, at that time. And I actually just found out today that we got the money to build that building, which is great and exciting. Just so that everybody knows, you can watch for some stuff, because in 2024 is the Whitaker Community Council, and our 501c3 nonprofit is our 50th anniversary. So just think about that. We've been out here doing this for 50 years. Oh, Flashback Grill is doing Thanksgiving dinner, and it's on Main and 42nd in Springfield. And I did see that it was being put on by Food for Lane County. And I do believe that they're the ones that did it in the Whitaker. That's, yeah.
Active volunteer everywhere there, and it was
Didn't we do it at the?
was at the Whitaker, at Whitaker Head Start, but it was actually not a Lane County event. It was actually just a community member who had a whole team of, and I believe they had nonprofit status, and she was
Okay. And my understanding is that Food for Lane County did take it over a little bit. But I don't know. It's been a long time. Yes.
it was 2 years ago. We're still doing it 2 years ago. And it wasn't Plain County. This volunteer.
Okay.
All the way to Thanksgiving dinner.
Right, and I do remember the Thanksgiving dinner, and now the Head Start building is no longer available to us. Which definitely makes it a little bit difficult. Do we have any questions? Anyone have any ideas about things that they want to see? Blair Alley is doing a low-cost spaghetti dinner. LCC culinary program helped with the Whitaker dinner for years. Okay. And I'm sure that they're also doing a dinner at the Mission. And I don't know so I know that, you know, COVID was a rough time for everybody and we made some major changes at that time. And I will tell you that one of the biggest changes that I've seen, I've lived in the neighborhood about 15 years. And I remember driving by and seeing the line of people out here smoking cigarettes and waiting to get in. And they would line up to try to come sleep the night at the Mission, and there were never enough beds or any of that. And when COVID happened, Cheryl, who runs the Mission, unfortunately had to let a few people go that were living here because of the social distancing. However, at that point, she completely reorganized the program. In case for those of you that don't know, you now can, if you come in, and I believe there's a certain time, and I don't know what that specifically is, but if you have a problem with alcohol, with drugs, any of that, they let you in. You don't have to go to church. And what they do once they let you in is that you have 14 days and they put you through a program. As long as that's what you want to do, they help you with the program to go through detoxing and to rebuild your life, to take your life back. After you go through 14 days of being clean and sober, then you go out into the general population. She actually lived here on the premises, I believe, for 6 to 9 months when COVID first happened, and they all got together and made changes. And as you can see in this room, it's great. They have Rotary meetings here. Lots and lots of people in the community are taking advantage of coming here and using this meeting space. I was told today, for those of you that are interested, they also have offered to give us free food. One thing that they're doing is they have a culinary program so that people, when they do get their ID, when they get training, when they get a job, they actually have a skill of going out and they teach them how to work in a kitchen. And they do that by feeding the people here. And so they've offered to feed everybody that comes to the meetings on Wednesdays. Second Wednesday of every month, they're more than happy to lay us out a really nice spread and feed us. So, Claire, thank you very much. I'll send you the list of who's here. Our secretary has an appointment and has to go. But you know, there's lots of room. There's definitely room for social distancing, and it's a great space. Do we have any questions? There is no general meeting or board meeting in the month of December. We take that off. But we will be here again on January 10th. We will be here. If you just go a little bit past the what was the Better Living Room, you make a left and go down the street. There's a sign right out there that says council meeting here. It's called the Learning Center. If you make it all the way to the end of the street, you've gone too far. And it's a nice big building. So we will be here in January for a meeting. And we'll put it out on social media, and I hope to see everybody here. Any board members have any suggestions on something that we may want to do? Fantastic. Jane, did you have a question?
Oh, who, me, Jane?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just turning my video on. I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting, when it was time for people to say whatever they wanted, that
What now?
now I want to say a thing that some of you have heard, that there's some high energy folks who are going to open up a barbecue at Tiny's. And I'm just really excited about it. I want to thank Jason and Margaret for helping them get on the Whitaker page. They, had to jump through some hoops that, I feel like, they were excited to be on the page, but they're really putting all their energy into getting the building ready. And so I appreciate that you made it easier for them. And I don't think Angelica's here tonight, but I'm kind of not surprised because, she is a busy gal. But many people commented on my post that are excited about eating barbecue again down at 4th and Blair. And it just, if you go by and you see them working on the building, say hi. They're really great.
Fantastic. I read that they're related to Papa, right?
Yeah. Midnight is Papa Soul's cousin. So, which is, even more exciting.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So please feel free to come back in January. We'll have the Zoom meeting. We'll be here as well. And unless anybody has anything else, I think we're done a little early. All right, Gail, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, didn't want you all to have to watch me eating dinner.
It's okay. You just hang on with me for a minute while everybody else signs off. All right, fantastic. Thank you all very much. Have a great evening.
Good night.
So do you have the ability, since you're the co-host, can you shut it down? And you'll get the notes.
I think so.
And you can still get the notes in the recording. But
It looks like I can leave. I don't think I can end the meeting. I think you have to do that.
Well, then we did that last month and I don't know where
It will ask us where we want to save the video, like as soon as we end the meeting. That pops up.
right, but what asks, do you want to save? And I said yes on there.
Yes, but it should also give you the option to select the file location.
Oh, it didn't.
Do you want a thumb drive?
Hold on a second.
That would be awesome. If you happen to have one.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It doesn't save to the program?
No, that setting's turned off for the city. It says we have to upgrade to a pro Zoom account
Well, they're
to
changing.
save to the
Google.
cloud.
Just so that, I think we're just basically board members, they're changing us to Google Pro.
Cool.
I think as of January. So there will be no more Zoom. I don't know what all that means, as most of you know.
We have to learn a whole new system.
I'm not very technologically sound, but yeah.
I'm just now Zoom savvy.
Yeah.
It's been 3 years. I can finally Zoom.
It is nice to have the.
Oh, well.
Setting.
Yeah, it is.
So did everyone that came in, so there's a fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. Will we see you in January? All right, fantastic. We would like. So you can save it to a different computer?
No,
No.
I think we're gonna try and save it to a flash drive. And I'm not sure what her name is, but.
So what do we have to do next time? Like I should bring out my laptop and just.
You should just bring a flash drive. Like what we're
Flash
gonna.
drive is an easy solution.
Yeah,
Right, well, flash drive, it takes a while to download it, doesn't it?
it's gonna take a while to download it either way, though.
I mean. Right, but I mean, if we downloaded it, if we started the meeting on our laptop. And then.
Then it would download onto that
It would just
laptop.
download onto that laptop, and we can still use this and just sign into the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, but it wouldn't have like host functions, so it would be a different, like you wouldn't be, like you admitted someone from this meeting
Right, you
today.
couldn't make them a co-host. You couldn't make that a co-host.
We
Because we
could,
made them a co-host.
we could, it would just be weird to have someone be a co-host who wasn't. We could also just log into our Zoom.
We're in our Zoom.
Yeah,
That's the thing, we're in our Zoom.
yeah, I know, but
That's what.
I was talking,
I don't.
I think that we should just do a flash drive, because I don't think. Because you're gonna have to stay here until it downloads either way, because it's attached to the web, like to the network, and if you took your laptop out of the network, it wouldn't be able to download. So either way, you're gonna have to wait for it.
How long would it take?
Couldn't be more than like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
It's only 2 hours. It shouldn't be that much.
Yeah,
It's not even 2 hours. It's not even an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, it was about an hour and a half long.
yeah, I think that max like 10 minutes.
Okay, well then
Do we
we
have a flash drive
will
coming
see
to
about, I'll see about ordering a flash drive off of Amazon or something.
Yeah, I thought that she was finding one for us, but maybe we should just end this and download it to the
Okay.
computer.
Do you folks need me for this part, or could I go finish my dinner off camera?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks very much.
And you don't mind doing it again in January?
I'll see you in January.
No, Will you host?
Do you want me to do this again?
Yeah.
Yes, I can do that, I think. Okay.
Same. I haven't looked at one of these in years, honestly.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great night.
And I launch a Zoom meeting and then screen share off a thumb drive and they think I'm on my computer. And so here's the drive.
Oh,
right
is it
here.
up here? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great.
And just so that.
This is a nifty little thing. Cool. Thank you so much. Best. That's like the equivalent of like having everything in your purse.
Yeah, I don't know.
It hasn't even popped up yet.
See, when I did it last time, I logged off the meeting. It's still in the meeting, and what I did is I logged off, and
Yeah.
then it popped up and said.
Yeah, I just wanted to know where the USB
I'll wait,
was
but-
before I did it.
I don't really want to know.
I resent that I have